Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
You know, Paul, if we've been recording the last, 15, 20 minutes or so, we covered public versus private businesses. We covered different, a business, some rental stuff, I should say leasing. We covered aliens. We covered, I feel like I'm missing something.
No, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so tonight I want to talk about critics.
Okay.
And I feel I've been reading a lot. Sometimes I swear, like you said, a computer simulation of life. I feel like what I think about sometimes just starts showing up on my social feed, and that's really weird. Like I must have said it somewhere. But I had
weird enough, even if you did, right? That it starts showing up. That's a whole nother topic, but yeah.
And I know you have no shortage of critics. I had my softball camp with 70 kids, and you think it's a success, and then someone's got to make a statement that downs it or marginalizes what you were doing. But what is it with critics that it's the people that aren't doing anything that almost have the biggest criticisms and opinions on what you should be doing right or wrong? Like, is that just human nature?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it comes back to a lot of things of like envy. I think that there's people who don't really have a lot of influence, we'll call it, in their lives, right? And maybe they haven't accomplished or they're not focused on doing other things that they can actually control and succeed in. Maybe there's, some things. I'm sure there's things out of their control, and they've had a rough go of it. Let's give them their let's give the best version of this for those people in fairness, right? And we'll try to be generous about it and say some of those people just haven't had a good lot in life, and I can get attention this way, right? And we all want attention. We all seek it in one form or another. And particularly, Paul, when you don't get it in a positive way, right? Because you're not performing, let's call it, or you're not accomplishing, or you're not producing. Well, there's another way to get it, and that's in a negative way. And let's say maybe that's the person who acts out or becomes a problem, and another one of those types of people, wouldn't you say, would be, the critic on everything, especially the critic on people who are actually trying and doing and certainly not perfectly, right? But willing to do it. And then, boy, what isn't it great? Number one, look, that they're doing something. I can put a wrench into this, right? Or a knife into this, and I can get some attention out of it, and I can get some power out of it, right? I mean, there's a lot of reasons to do it. I mean, I don't like any of them, and I'm sure you don't either, any of those reasons I'm saying. But I think that's probably a lot of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I just saw a video I was watching where a professor writes an equation on the board 9 times in a row perfectly. 10th time he writes it wrong on purpose, and the students start mumbling and calling him out on it. And he's like, "You did not say one thing. You did not praise me with the 9 right equations, but I write the 10th one wrong." And it's like, oh, and this. And he goes, the problem is when you're in a position of authority, people just assume you're smarter than them. That's not always the case. It just could be the path you took, right? Like a good leader, I'm rambling a little bit. A good leader knows you surround yourself with smart people make
better
decisions.
Than you, right? People,
Don't be the smartest person in the room. But a lot of times, if you're in a position of authority, people just assume you're so much smarter. They probably didn't work as hard as you. So any chance they get to pull you back down to their level, they call you on it instead of giving you the benefit of the doubt just because of your position of authority. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, well, what I think about on this topic more than even like the critic is like, why do we care, right? Like, why do you care? Why do I care? And we do. I mean, some of us care more than others. And it's funny. A friend of mine asked me today in a text. He said, "Hey, can you help me stop caring what other people think?" And he said, it just holds me back in so much." And it's very common, right? I mean, I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people are like that. But I think the question I ask myself on this topic is like, why do we care? And I think the answer to that is a lot of it's biological, right? We're always looking at the negative because the negative is the threat, and the threat is what's going to I'm going back. It's going to harm us, kill us, end our lives, right? It's a threat. So what are you going to pay more attention to? The person who says, "Hey, um, good job, good job avoiding that snake," or "Watch out for the snake," right? Because the snake gets you, you're dead. I mean, I'm talking again. I'm going back
Right.
in terms of biology and but we're very prone to the negative, right? Because that's the thing that can stop our ability to move forward, procreate, all those types of things that I would I think is really why we're so prone to it, is because we are wired to be looking at the negative much more so than the positive. I mean, look at your life, or I'll look at mine, or people can look at theirs. It's like, go back 20 years and look at the 20-year-old you, 20-year-old version, 20 years ago version of you. And if that version saw who you are today, would that version be happy? My guess is, Paul, in your case, they'd be happy. They think, wow, look at all I've done. Look at my family. Look at my accomplishments. Look at all those things. And I would say the same thing about me, but today's version just looks at, right, the threats and the negatives and the things that maybe didn't go right or what. We're prone to it. So we react, you put a post on Twitter, let's say, and you get all these likes and shares and all this, and three people come after you on it. And that's what drags you down. That's your mood on it. And again, that's one of the reasons, Paul, I don't like being on social media and Twitter and all that, which we've talked about before. I just think we're prone to it. It's in our nature. It's very hard to deal with. It's very hard not to acknowledge and not to think about. I've certainly got better at it over time, but I'm still prone to it, probably like everyone.
Yeah, I think back of what our good friend Cam F. Awesome always says. When you meet somebody, there's three things you can do. Lift them, lower them, or leave them alone, the three L's. And leaving them alone costs no energy on your part, right?
Yeah.
Lifting them up is energy, but you're building this positive network. Lowering them takes an equal amount of energy, but it's negative energy that just takes away from something both you and them could be doing. And it's so crazy that so many people chose the lower still, right?
Yeah. Well, and why do you think that is? Why do you think people do
Well,
that?
you said a word in the beginning. I think it's envy. You used the word control. I think people, there's two ways to look at it. You could feel you have a lot of control in your life, or you could feel you have no control, and you just kind of go which way the wind blows, with energy. But I think most people feel like if something doesn't go their way and they don't put the effort into it, it's because, well, they just say, well, I can't control that, right? And so it's easier to pull people down. You've heard that. You've heard those famous experiments with crabs in a bucket.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I guess we're no different, right? Biology's biology.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just easier to pull people down. And unfortunately, so many people, I think, underachieve because they worry, like your friend, what other people think. And it
Mhm.
blows my mind. There's some neat books out there. There's one that's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Blank. Can't say the F word as a public employee, maybe in 2 years. Uh, and we spend as much time, it's proportionate that we spend as much time worrying about what others think, and that it's like it's that same amount of time that people really don't care what we think. So there's like, we're spending all this time worrying, and people are spending that same amount of time worrying about themselves and not you. So if you can get that in your head, it just doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, and I think that's about as good of a explanation or way to convince people not to worry, because they're not, there are your moments, right? Like you're talking about, there are moments where someone's got something to say, something negative, but to think that the vast majority of people who are thinking about you and what you're doing, or there's this thing, don't judge me, or you're judging, this whole judging thing all the time. I hear that, and I've always just rolled my eyes, on that, like do you think you're that special that I'm judging? I don't care, for, I mean, if you're harming people, I got an issue, or you're harming yourself, I don't want you to. But the fact that you think I'm spending my time, I don't have enough time to worry about the people I love, and the people in my family, and as I probably should or would like to spend worrying about, random people out there. And I think most people don't. I think the narcissism that goes with everyone's so concerned with me and they're judging me is unhealthy.
You know, it's funny. The narcissism, and instead of "don't judge me," maybe you should have a shirt that says "I don't care what you think." Like that would pivot it better. Uh, Sometimes people, I try not to get involved in gossip, but people just love to tell stories, right? So whether it's a student or my mom or a friend, hey, they tell me something. Now don't tell anybody. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't even want to hear it, yet alone. I don't like, I like, as soon as I was just being nice, asking like, how are things going or what's new. As soon as this conversation's over, I'm so busy in the day. I like, it's not even staying in my head. But they think my plan now is to go tell what they said to everybody else. And I really feel bad for people that like they have nothing else better to do in their day
I
but to
was going to say,
criticize, spread gossip.
I think there's a lack of other things to do, right? I mean, I guess, isn't that a consequence of the wealth that we have in this country and much of the world in 2023, that that we've got so much free time, our needs are met, we all got flush, running water and air conditioning for the most part, and ways to get around, and full refrigerators and all that. Our biggest problems are, gossip and criticizing, how someone runs their camp or doesn't run their camp, or whatever it might be. That's I would argue that's a way of saying, wow, we've done quite well, if these are the things that a lot of people are worried about. Because I'm like you, I don't have time for that. I'm not interested in it, number one. And number two, I've got enough. I've got plenty to do in things that I would say are actually important. They're certainly important to me, and that I hope turn into something productive, which is how I define a lot importance in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm changing the topic mid podcast kind of, but I think it's interesting. If you've earned your wealth and it's become a way of life and what you do, you'll probably never stop working, right? You'll never stop. Maybe you criticize yourself, but you never stop worrying about what other people say about you because you're earning it and you're building it. If you've inherited it, I think it's a new ball game because you don't have any value attached to what you've been given. So I feel like at that point you can start worrying about more what other people are thinking. Maybe you worry, I inherited it. Maybe you worry like, I don't know. I think you become more narcissist if you've inherited something.
Like,
Rather,
I think it might be pretty common for someone who's been given anything. Let's say it's like whether it's wealth,
yes,
whether it's the top,
spot on a team.
the vice president position of the family business, right?
Yes,
Or now, hey, you're gonna get to be pitcher, you get to be a starting pitcher, but your dad's a coach, things like that. If you're
that
getting,
never happens.
no, that would never happen. If you're getting anything without earning it, And it's certainly not to say anyone in any of those positions hasn't earned it. But let's say you haven't, or don't believe you have, then I think it would be very natural to hear those things and take them a little more personally, because you probably feel like there's some truth to it.
You think? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but you know what? Life's not fair, and sometimes those things happen. And I would go back to the same thing that I try to keep in mind: is control what you can control. I can hear my dad telling me that right now in my ear. Matt, control what you can control, and don't worry about anything else. And he wasn't naive to think that you wouldn't have other worries, but put your focus in the areas you can control. And it comes back to a lot of the number of the people I hear who just the victimization of themselves that I hear all the time. It's not my fault, and it's this, and it's not that. And even if some of those things are true, it doesn't help you to make yourself a victim. Control what you can control. Some things are negative are happening in your life that you can't control. You've got to learn to deal with them. You've got to learn to move on. You've got to learn to control the things you can. And I think if you put your focus more on the things you can control, no, I don't think it. I know it. I know it to be true. In fact, do it. If you don't believe me, do it and see what the results are. And I think, I know you'll get a lot farther than sitting on your couch playing the victim. But I think that's the best lesson any person can have at the end of the day in their lives. Control what you can control, put in the work, be accountable, be personally responsible, put one foot in front of the next, and I think you'll be shocked at the results.
Do you think how stable you are with your identity has something to do with all this? Like, if you're worried about what critics think, I feel like you don't really know who you are or what you stand for. If I'm here to do this, I'm trying to do this, don't know how good at it I am right now, but I'm going to keep plugging along, but this is my mission. I think you're less apt to worry about that. But and what I'm coming from, I see it with athletes all the time. Like they identify themselves solely as a softball player, baseball player, basketball player, volleyball player, instead of realizing they should identify as someone that understands structure, discipline, hard work with no guarantees. And if you stay true to those principles and not worry about what other people think, you'll succeed on your journey. But when you pigeonhole yourself to just one specific type of function, I think that's when this stuff starts echoing in your ear a lot.
Interesting. So you think those people who identify themselves based on a title, let's say, versus values, is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, I mean, so let's take you. You're an entrepreneur, right? But I'm saying I don't think you identify just as that. You've told me several times you identify as someone that jumps into the adventure and just goes balls to the wall to try to accomplish what you want to accomplish. I don't think you think of yourself as an entrepreneur. I think you think of yourself as someone that's just trying to make the most out of their adventure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
I'm not saying you're not an entrepreneur. Of course,
I know you're not. I know you.
But if you failed at one venture of that, it wouldn't stop you.
Yeah, I think I try to identify more as based on my value system, which really, Paul, is kind of our four pillars,
Right.
in some ways. And if I look at myself based on my values and what I believe in is right and accountability and personal responsibility, the other things I happen to do, whether it's being an entrepreneur, being the best husband, the best father, those are titles, if you will, that are extremely important to me. That personal response, I better show up and be the right husband, right? I better be accountable. I better be accountable to my wife and my children and those kinds of things. So, same thing, my businesses, I better be accountable and show up and be, for my employees, for my customers, those kinds of things. So I think it's more about to agree with you, I think it's more about, I have certain values that I believe in, and no matter what role or what title I'm what hat I have on, right? What actor I'm being in the moment, the entrepreneur, the husband, the father, the son, the brother, the friend. All of those value systems are all the same, right? I'm still gonna attempt to hold myself accountable, attempt to be reliable, attempt to tell the truth and seek the truth, attempt to be on the adventure within all those frameworks. And if I do that, then I think I'll have a much better outcome. But I don't look at myself as I'm strictly a this or strictly a that. And hey, if I'm just an entrepreneur, but I don't have any values, well then, hey, there's an opportunity to get involved in this business. I'm going to screw over some people, and I'm going to hurt some people, but hey, I'm an entrepreneur and that's who I am. And I wouldn't do that because I have a different set of values. So does that make sense? Because I think you're right. I think it's more about the values and the title. And if you're set on the title but not the values, I think it's only due to crash and burn eventually, and to worry about what other people think because you don't have your values right.
Pretty interesting. All that stuff you just said technically doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it, does it?
No, not at all. Not at all.
And of course, some of those things you mentioned, of course, help you make dollars.
Well, I'll give you the best example of that, and I believe with this wholeheartedly. As a business person, and I was listening to a video on like Facebook Reels or something weeks ago, and
so it's true. So it's 100%.
This real estate entrepreneur was talking about, and from what I gather, he's quite wealthy. I don't even know his name. Doesn't matter. But he's got a young family, and he was talking about how what he talks to his kids about is not how much money we have. It's about where do we provide value in the marketplace? And that's what I talk about all the time. It's what I talk about to my daughter. It's what I talk about as a business person. It's not about, hey, I'm not here to money. It's where do I provide value to the market? And if you do that and your goal is to make money, or your goal, you don't even have to have a goal to make money, Paul. If your goal is to provide value and you do a great job at it, you will make money. You won't have any choice. It'll be impossible not to. Because money shows up in exchange for value. That's what it is all day long, unless we're in a different environment. But in our world, and in a marketplace world, money is an exchange for value. And if you're providing value and you're thinking all the time, provide value, and that goes for being a teacher, right? Yep. You could go in there and heck, you could sit on your chair all day and read the text, and there's going to be a test on Friday, and read the chapters, and that's the end. I don't think that's providing value versus what lecturing and giving lessons and getting them out in the real world, all the things you do. One provides much more value than the other, and there's no money exchanged here at all.
Well, you see it in education, because you have the people that say it doesn't matter what I do, I don't make a difference, and they fight the system and get through the system. But anybody that realizes they stand by their values and they're making the right choices, and they're taking care of business in whatever type of business it is they do, you're happier. I think the opportunities roll in, and the money will roll in. I mean, yeah, it might not be unlimited money. It might not be uncapped money, but you're always going to be taken care of, put it that way. I mean, that's a whole nother topic after that, expenses and personal finance and whatnot. But if you hold by your values, and you surround yourself with people that do the same, and you're trying to learn, and you're not worried about the haters, and that's what I mean. Critics here, I don't mean constructive criticism. I mean like literally the haters, the people that just pull you down no matter what. You stay above all that and true to yourself, you're going to be fine for a good life, whatever that measure is, because the good life could be that's a whole nother conversation, right?
Sure.
What that is. So
well,
anyways,
don't you think you've also got to decide who you're going to spend your time with, right? And it doesn't mean there can't be people from the outside who are trying to bring you down for whatever reason they have, or however they're justifying it. But one of the truest things I've ever read, and I've heard it many times, I certainly didn't invent it, was you are the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yes.
And I would say that if you're spending one of those 5 or 10 people, whatever the number is, I don't know if there's any magic to the number 5, but if one or more of those people are people you would consider negative towards your goals, your dreams, what you're trying to accomplish, assuming you're trying to accomplish good things, then you got, as hard as it may be, you got to get rid of those people. Those people cannot be in your life. And there's probably, almost all of us have people in our lives, if we gave it some thought, we'd go, boy, I'm not sure this person is best for me to be around. And that's not easy. But I think I believe it's very necessary to eliminate those people from your life. I really do.
Yeah, and we tend to make exceptions sometimes if they're people we've grown up with, or family members, or in our inner
So
circle,
hard.
right?
So hard.
It's easy to sit there and say that, and so then you try to, all right, well, yeah, I get that, but I just won't hang out with them, or you don't look forward to going to events with them. And I don't know, that's just the reality of life too. I mean, you're always going to have people around you, so how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think what you try to do is you try to spend more time with other better influences, and because there's certain people you're not going to eliminate from your life, but I think you can eliminate them in being in spending as much time with them. And I can think of some people right now that I go, man, they're a kind, they're a time suck in my life. They're not bringing a whole lot of value to me, and I don't mean that in a I guess I do mean it in a selfish way, because I think we all have to be selfish about certain things. And if those people are there, for me, what I just try to reduce the amount of time I'm with people like that, because there are people that I know it's difficult to not spend some time with. There's people you're obligated to spend some time with because they are family, or that kind of thing. But you've got to eliminate some of that. I know there are a lot of people who are in environments where it's very, everything's negative and it's tough. And I don't know how you succeed in an environment like that. I think you'd have to remove yourself from it.
Do you so is it fair to say, in real world, we're not talking self-help books and multimillionaire celebrities, everybody's going to have people that are critics in the sense of lowering you, that suck your time and energy away from you, but you just have to learn to deal with them?
I think you have to learn to deal with them. I think you have to limit one, two. I think you have to limit the amount of time you allow them in your space. I think doesn't mean zero, but I think you can limit it. And number 3, and I think most importantly, you've got to understand they're not, you can't. I've always been good at this. It goes back to my parents. I think I really do. I think it goes back to my parents. I just have never, not never. I don't concern myself that often with what other people think. I just have never felt like, oh, even in the teenage years when everyone's worried about
Right.
what their hair looks like, what brand they have on, what car. I didn't care. I just never did. So maybe some of it's just how I'm wired, and I think a lot of it goes back to how I grew up with my parents and even my brothers. It was just, there was always this core group of people I knew loved me regardless. Even though my brothers could be jerks, of course, but they loved me regardless. So these outside things didn't matter to me. So ever, it's kind of been, I always kind of feel like it was a superpower I had that I didn't earn. I just kind of inherited it. But I've never really been too concerned with what other people think. But I think you can teach yourself to not be. And it comes down to, who am I as a person? What do I value? And if I'm maintaining that, it's almost religious, right? It's almost religion,
Right.
this is who I am. This is my belief system.
Right.
Then these other things that they won't bother me that much because I have a belief system.
So if we've attempted to solve anything, I'm going to sum it up right now. Okay. When it comes to critics, and again, I don't mean constructive criticism. I was talking about people that lower you or intimidate you from accomplishing what you want to try to do. You have to identify them. You have to control what you can control and minimize them in your life, and then stay true to yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you mean by stay true to yourselves, you mean your value system and what you really you really believe in, and I think that's it. I mean, I don't think anyone could walk into your house, Paul, and convince you that your family shouldn't be the most, your wife and daughter shouldn't be the most. That's you're right. That's part of your value system, right? There's no way anyone's convincing of you of that. So if they're criticizing you for that, does it matter to you? Does it mean it? It doesn't mean a thing to you because you know how
Well,
important.
it's funny, and that's why I bring all that up as we close out, because yeah, I know that, but if you don't identify them and minimize them in your life, all of a sudden what they start saying starts creeping into your thought process and changing your values, right? Of course, nothing's more important than my family, or nothing's more important. But if you're listening to critics and people lowering you, it starts it slowly starts infusing into your belief system, is what I think. And I think that changes people. So you have to always identify, minimize them,
Minimize.
and
Yep.
stay true to yourself. And you have to repeat what's important to you. Because if not, man, life's gonna suck it out of you.
It will. It will. I think
So
anyone's probably who's had any life experience has probably felt that to some degree. That resonates with me.
absolutely. Hey, as always, I don't know what we solved, but we had fun talking about it.
Absolutely.
Hey, until next time, Matt.
All righty.